Hi, I'm Bart Hansen. I'm the owner and lead instructor for CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the instructions in the video description. So, sorry, man, you got a hand for us here?
I do. This is actually from one of the home games around here in Fort Worth.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
It's 1-3, and I'm 1K effective with the villain.
Okay. It's pretty deep for a 1-3 game, right? 1K?
It is. It was an unusual game, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm in MP1 with ace-4 of spades.
Okay.
And I open to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then gets to the hijack. He ends up folding out, but he calls the 15.
Okay, so you open to 15, hijack calls. Okay.
Hijack calls.
Yeah.
And then the villain in the cutoff. He and I have pretty similar stacks. He re-raises to 45.
Okay, so it's kind of a smallish raise, right? Like only 3x with a call in between. Okay, gets folded back around to you.
Right, and so I just thought I don't really want to call here. It doesn't seem profitable, and be calling out of position, and I'll be out in position 2 people. We are 1K effective. I thought maybe this is better as a 4-bet.
Okay, so you 4-bet?
Yeah, I 4-bet to 145.
Okay, let's just talk about that really quick. I mean, so when you look at, and there's a bunch of people that, all these guys that have called in here. I put you guys all on mute if you guys are first-time callers, but we'll go in order. Let's just talk about preflop. Obviously, we talk about, like you're in a positional. It's very difficult to call when there's somebody basically to your left, right? Multi-way, because it's very hard to realize, right? Like in this case, you've got this guy who has called in the hijack, right? And if you call, he's definitely going to call too, right? So you are incentivized to 4-bet some hands. Like it's interesting when you look at these pre-flop sort of solutions, and I'm not saying that people play like this, but it's just interesting to note that, especially at this stack depth, if you had like kings or queens and you were heads up, this is a flat a lot of the time. I bet like kings at this stack depth from out of position, if you were heads up here, especially if you had opened from more early position and the button had 3-bet you, I bet you kings is only like 4-bet like 50-50, and queens is probably called most of the time. Now, when you add somebody in between, the frequency goes up like a ton, right? Like if you have kings and queens, you're 4-betting for sure if somebody's in between. So that's just a little something here. So you want to have some 4-bet bluffs. People at 1-3, I mean, probably not going to be that experienced playing a 4-bet pot. I don't know how many 4-bet pots you've played with stack depth. I mean, even me, I don't play in that many 4-bet pots. Ace-4 suited is interesting because it's actually one of the better suited aces, I would say. Like Ace-4, Ace-5, and Ace-9 are kind of the best ones. So I think it's too weak to just fold even with a guy in there. You're definitely continuing. And the question here is it better as a 4-bet? Is it better as a call? I think it would probably be a partial. Like you could fold like Ace-6, Ace-7, Ace-8 suited, Ace-2 suited. You know what I mean? Things like that. So I have no problem with the 4-bet. So you 4-bet to 145, okay?
And part of the reason was I thought that some of the time I could get an immediate fold because I just thought
absolutely.
45 is not super strong.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, because if he was going to make it 3x plus the limper, it should be like 75, right? I mean, that's one of the things you can pick up on too. Even if I've talked about this in my podcast. Even if you aren't super experienced playing like multi-bet. What I mean by that is 3-bet, 4-bet pots at the lower levels. Sometimes it's just free money when you can just pick up on sizings. Like if, I talk about it like in my 5-5 challenge. If it goes like limp and the button makes it like 15 in a 5-5 game over 3 limpers, that's never a real hand. Sure, you can 3-bet. And here it's sort of the same thing. This isn't really a normal sizing. So I can get on board with you 4-betting here more than calling. So you 4-bet to 145. I'm assuming the hijack folds in between. Is that right?
Hijack folds, villain calls.
Okay. So hijack folds and cutoff calls, right? So you're out of position and the pot's like what, 300-ish, something like that?
Yeah, right? It's about 300 with some rake taken out.
Okay, yep.
Okay, flop. So yeah, I felt good about the 4-bet in the moment. I thought it was better than a call, but then I, of course, as you already pointed out, I'm rarely in this spot, so I didn't really have a plan, and I immediately felt lost. The flop is Jack of Diamonds, Deuce of Clubs, 7 of Clubs.
Sorry, guys, I didn't realize I didn't have the graphics up. So it's Jack of Diamonds. What was it again? Jack of Diamonds, Deuce of Clubs,
Deuce
7
of
of Clubs.
Clubs, 7 of Clubs.
Okay, so you just whiff here, right, with Ace 4 of Spades.
Yeah, I whiff.
Right. And this is part of the reason why you structure your, I talk about this too. Part of the reason why you structure with suited hands, and why you want to 3-bet and 4-bet your suited hands with stack depth more than your offsuited, so you can construct post flop. It's like a pretty big argument that I get into with people that the newer stuff says no, you're supposed to 3-bet your suited hands, not your offsuited hands, unless you're short. So Jack 2-7. I mean, this is kind of interesting here because this might be. I'm not the best at this stuff, Christian. Like from the top, over the top of my head, of like what would a quote unquote solver do in a spot like this? But you could probably bet 1/3 with your entire range. I don't hate checking either. You have nothing going on here. I think you can check fold here sometimes too. And I don't really know how people respond to the small bet. Like you could probably like c-bet like maybe 40 to 50% of the pot and probably show an immediate profit. My issue with betting super small is how people react, and how the small bet is supposed to get people to overfold, to not defend enough, and I just don't think that really goes on that much in live poker. You will sometimes get a bluff response, which is not necessarily what you want to have happen because you don't always have a hand. You know what I'm saying? So like if you bet like 1/3 and a guy bluffs you, whereas you could bet 40 or 45% of the pot and the guy folds, it's interesting. So what did you do here?
Well, let me ask you this. What my plan was to, if I could have at least one spade, then I was feeling
Right.
going to feel comfortable. And, maybe some high spades I wouldn't have bet, but like
Right.
Jack, Deuce, say if it was a 7 of spades, that seemed like the more likely.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. Yeah, I think you can start with the back door here. You know what I'm saying? Then this is where like you structure, right? Like you start with, you have Ace 4 of Spades, right? So, unless the board comes out monotone, you're gonna have at least a backdoor flush draw, right? Like 50% of the time, at least, right?
Okay.
If it's a rainbow board, you're gonna have a backdoor flush draw, 75% of the time, right? But here you don't have it, so you don't always have to c-bet. So did you check?
Okay. I check, and Dylan checks back.
Okay.
So,
Turn.
Now the turn is the 3 of spades.
Okay, so you pick up a wheel draw now, right? Pot's 600.
I pick up.
Pot's like
I
600.
pick up a wheel draw.
Yeah.
Pot's still 300 because we didn't bet.
Oh, excuse me. Pot's like 300. I'm sorry. You have like, whatever, like 850 left, right? So you're dealing with about 2 or 3 pot size bets. So it goes check here. I could see this going either way. Like you could probably bet, but then you're going to have to go bet here. Or, crazy enough, I think you can actually check call here sometimes too. You know what I mean? Or it's going to go check here too. Check here, check call with ace high and a wheel draw. And, I don't think a lot of the better ace highs are necessarily bluffing you here. So he's going to either have you beat or you have the best hand here with ace 4. So as crazy as it sounds, I don't hate a check here again. But if I were to probably take a bet here, then it's probably going to have to go bet, especially if there's some sort of overcards that might like run across on the jack or something like that. So pot's about 300. What did you do here?
Well, my thought process, I want to hear what you think about.
Yeah.
I thought when he checks back, I just felt like he's got a ton of ace king, and I need to get ace king to fold, and people overfold ace king.
Okay.
Like if I had ace king in his spot, I would not fold to a bet on the turn. But a lot of people, they place ace king cagely, and if they don't hit the board, then they just fold it. So
you think they would? You think that he would just fold now on the turn with ace king? I mean, I guess so. I mean, you're the 4 better, so yeah.
I think it's a possibility. I think people overfold. I think typical people in my game will overfold ace king there.
So it sounds like you bet here, right? Is that right?
I did, but I think I probably bet too small. I bet 100.
And villain calls. Is that right?
Villain calls. Villain
Yeah, I
calls.
mean, this is again one of these spots where it's like, what exactly, what are you betting here? Like 100 on the turn now. What is 100 accomplishing? So it is a bluff. Is that what you're saying? You're trying to bluff ace king off the hand, right? Is that right?
Right.
Basically.
Yeah. I'm targeting. I'm only targeting ace king. I don't expect him to fold any pairs.
Right.
Any
I mean,
pair.
listen, like if you take this sizing on the turn and you think ace king's going to call because it's so small, you have to follow up on the river, right? And this is sort of where you get into a dance of like, do you want to play this as a two street, or do you just want to bet more like standard, like on turn, like 150 to 175, and then give up if he calls? You know what I'm saying? Give up if he calls, unless you improve. So you bet 100 and he calls. So now the pot's 500, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
King of hearts on the river.
King of hearts on the river. Wow, this is interesting because you sort of loaded the hand up for us a little bit. Your name's Christian, right? Is that right? Am I saying that? Yeah. You kind of loaded this up like I didn't have this information, what you just said, what you were thinking the guy was saying. Because when I read this, when you sent it in via email, I was like, I think you have to bluff here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to bluff here at the end. Now, you seem to have it in your head that the guy has ace-king, but what if he has, like, eights or nines or tens or something like that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have an ace in your hand, right? So,
I didn't think about that.
You know, king of hearts is out there. So, you know, there are 3 more aces and 3 more kings, right? So there's 9 total combos of ace-king that he could have, with the one king being out there and you having one ace in your hand. Eights, nines, tens, there are 6 combos of each one of those hands, right? Eights, nines, and tens. There's like 18. And then possibly something else. I don't, you know, or maybe like even ace queen suited or some shit like that. Like, I think that I bluff here. I mean, It sounds to me like you might have had it stuck in your head that this guy has ace king, and now on the river you're like, fuck, like he just ran into ace king. But I think with the pot being like 500, I'd probably bet maybe like I don't think you need to polarize per se, but I might bet like a half to maybe like 300, something like that. You know?
Okay, I was thinking like 275, something like that. Yeah, that like I've thought of this hand a lot, man.
Yeah.
I think my logic was inconsistent because I'm trying to get ace king to fold on the turn, and then thinking that I'll get a lot of folds on the turn, and then you're right. I just sort of had ace king clouding my head. So then when the king came on the river, I'm like, oh, that's his ace king, but it doesn't really make sense. So unfortunately, I checked, and he checked back, and he had queens.
He had queens.
So,
okay, that's interesting.
So I think, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if queens is going to fold necessarily at the end, but I think queens probably actually. I mean, obviously he's much stronger than we thought when he checks back the flop, but it sort of kind of fits into that category of, oh, okay, he could have a pair here too. It would have been interesting though, right? Because like you go bet, and you probably don't see many 4-bets like in your game, right? So this guy's got to think you're going to have ace king here, like a fair amount too.
Yeah.
Now the question is that at that point, like, well, do people bet ace king for value at the end? Like, do they play ace king this way? And then you get into this situation where guys will call you just because they don't see anybody in the player pool bet one pair like this, so they're just like, oh, I'm just going to call. He must be bluffing. And you can use that to your advantage, obviously, by thinly value betting against people. But that's a nice little hand. I appreciate the call. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.